When World War I began, only 50 years after the end of slavery, a vast majority of African Americans still lived in the South and toiled as sharecroppers in the same fields that their ancestors once worked. They lived as second-class citizens under inhumane conditions, hopelessly impoverished and lacking access to the most basic rights afforded to a majority of white Americans and newly arrived European immigrants. When war broke out in Europe in 1914, much of America was prospering and there was little interest in the foreign conflict. But as the war became a global struggle for democracy and America's allies suffered unimaginable devastation, the pressure to join forces mounted. In 1917, the United States entered the war. With the passing of the Selective Service Act of 1917, the military was open to all men between the ages of 21 and 30, including African American men. Nearly 400,000 African American men were enlisted, with most assigned to thankless but invaluable duties, such as handling supplies, digging trenches, and repairing battlefields. 2 black combat units were also formed, and following protests, the War Department created training facilities throughout the United States for African American soldiers, most notably the Officers Training Camp at Fort Des Moines in Iowa. The 369th Infantry, known as the Harlem Hellfighters, gained the most attention. They served on the front lines for 191 consecutive days, more than any other American unit. The entire 369th Regiment was decorated with the French Croix de Guerre, France's highest honor for military service. Meanwhile, thousands of black women served in support roles in the United States and traveled to France in 1918 to serve as teachers, mothers, and hostesses to nearly 200,000 African American soldiers serving on the Western Front. Through their participation in World War I, African Americans serving as soldiers, volunteers, and YMCA secretaries gained self-esteem and would be transformed by their service. Their legacies are many. African American soldiers brought jazz to France. It was James Reese Europe's 369th Regimental Band that toured France and introduced the French people to a new form of music. Soldier musicians from Kansas City also excited the French people with music that would enliven a global cultural landscape. When the African American regiments returned to the United States after the war, they were cheered. Despite the persistence of racism, black communities were transformed by the war and assumed a new and better outlook for their future in America. World War I invigorated a new generation of African Americans to fight for true democracy and full citizenship. The country would never be the same.